Hello and welcome to Overdrive. This is Rohit Paradkar and this right here is the 2022 Hyundai Venue. So what has changed? Well, we have a detailed walk around review. So click the link to check all the details, all the changes on this. I'm here to tell you what I think about all these design and feature changes. The changes to the car are anything but subtle. And while I've only seen the new Venue in red, grey and white, I think the new design stands out the most in the white color, highlighting the new tailgate, the chunky 16-inch rims, and of course that new grille, which now looks a lot more imposing than the outgoing car simply because of that little black applique between the grille and the indicators. This chunky pattern that you see on the grille and also the dark chrome finish, it's going to get common across Hyundai cars very soon. That's their new design signature. We've seen a bit of it on the Alcazar, but this is more Palisade inspired, especially with the treatment given to the turn blinkers. This is more Palisade inspired than the Creta or the Alcazar. Similarly, you also get LED projector beam lamps now, which should work better than the outgoing units. Speaking of the tail, you get a new design element. This is called the H pattern. You can see the vertical elements right here and then a seamless strip of LEDs that highlights the width of the car, makes it look wider than what it is. And then you'll again see that segmented pattern right here in the tail lights, something that we'll also see very soon on the Ioniq 5 electric vehicle. So I think these kind of bits give it a premium touch, make it feel more expensive than before. But what's also going to get expensive is the cleaning cost for the vehicle. If you look closely at all this dark chrome finish, you will see water droplets, all of that, very nicely highlighted. So you'll have to keep that clean every now and then. And going forward, once the car starts aging, this big plastic applique is going to start looking blemished and old. So keeping these two elements shiny and clean is going to be a tough affair. While we couldn't get a chance to sample the new headlights, the new projector beam LED headlamps promise better illumination than the outgoing halogens, which weren't really the best in class. The segmented turn blinkers also look good in my opinion, though they have a single bulb. Hyundai has also thrown in a couple of LEDs under the wing mirror to act as puddle lamps. So not much has changed to the design of the dashboard or to the cabin as such. You still continue to get this big display. The layout, however, is different. It's still tilted a little bit to the passenger more than the driver. And this layout, let me know what you think about it. I preferred the tile layout of the previous or the outgoing Venue. That was, I think, a little bit easier to use, easier to read while on the go without having to take your eyes too far off the road. This one is obviously just a new skin on top of it, but I think that layout was a little bit better. You also get the choice of different profile settings, which will essentially make changes to how you want the maps to be displayed, the language, etc. Now, speaking of language, you also can change the language that you see here for the display. If we go into general and we go into language, you can choose from different Indian languages, and that's a very good thing. There's Hindi, Bangla, Marathi, and a whole list of South Indian languages as well. And there is Korean as well. So in case you are a Korean expat who is living here in India and you're choosing one of these, you can still choose that language as well. So I think the choice of languages is quite good. Let's just shift this to Hindi. भाषा बदल गई है. तो यहाँ आप देख सकते हैं language जो है वो completely change हो गई है. So that is a very good thing. It's a nice feature to have. This still remains one of the most feature-rich cabins, of course, and that's also thanks to the connected tech, which Hyundai now says is up to 60 features. Anyway, one missed opportunity that I think that they ought to have done is to do with the Apple CarPlay or the Android Auto. Yes, there are enough charging ports. You have a USB-A port, you have a USB-C port for fast charging. There's a 12-volt socket as well. But to get Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you are only still relying on the USB-A port. There's no wireless option. Now with a wireless charging pad, I think they should have done wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as well. Some of the cheaper cars have started doing that, so I don't think it's going to be difficult on the integration. So that I think is a bit of a missed opportunity. The infotainment has made it to a premium audio unit, though there is no Bose audio. There are plenty of storage spaces, and now the tunnel console has two usable cup holders because the barrel type air purifier has been traded in for a sleeker unit that sits under the armrest like the Creta. But learning from the Creta, its switch is moved to the side of the armrest to avoid unintended operation. The rear seat of the Venue has some subtle but quite important changes. Now, one of the common complaints for the rear seat was the lack of space. So they have nicely scooped out a little bit more knee room. Foot space has never been a complaint, so that continues to remain good. No change to the headroom, but I think anyone up to about 6 feet shouldn't be uncomfortable here because they have nicely scooped out the roof liner. Visibility outside of the windows was never a concern either. But what they've done now is add a bit of recline to the seat back. So if you don't want that upright seating position, you want something a little bit more relaxed, you can have that. So overall, this continues to be a nice place. You also have 2 USB ports, you have the rear AC vents. Yeah, nothing really missing back here. The reclining rear seats don't make much of a difference to the generous boot space, which remains unchanged over the outgoing car. There are enhancements to the front seat as well. So you have electronic adjustment now to go forward and back, and also to adjust recline. So both reach and recline can be adjusted electronically. The steering still has mechanical adjustments, and only for the tilt. You don't get a telescopic adjustment on this. Now, this is the IMT, which means there's no clutch. All I need to do is put the shifter into first and start rolling. You also get a new digital display. It has different alerts now compared to the outgoing Venue. So especially on the IMT, when you are in the wrong gear, when it tells you to shift to the right gear, there used to be a very silent alert or chime on the outgoing Venue. This one attracts a bit more attention with a slightly louder setup. And of course, if you have driving modes, which you get with the automatics, it will also change the colors of the layout. And of course, the engine character too. On the automatic variant, you also get these paddle shifters whenever you want to take manual control of the DCT gearbox. But I've said this before, the DCT gearbox for Indian conditions has been tuned extremely well. There is not a lot of that jerky feeling, not a lot of head nod. And now with different driving modes, you have a slightly different character as well. And there is a noticeable change in the 3 driving modes. The Eco mode, it feels a bit too dull for my liking, especially with a small engine like this. But the Sport mode and the normal modes, those are the ones that I would stick to. Sport mode if I'm driving around the winding roads, or if I want to pull quick overtakes out on the highway. But otherwise, the normal mode just works perfectly well in most driving conditions. The Eco, I would only engage if you are really trying to squeeze out the last bit of fuel economy from this engine. Again, remember, this is a small engine. Out on the open highway, you could still use the Eco mode if you don't have to do a lot of overtaking where downshifting is not going to be involved too much. The Eco mode should help you just fine. But if it is a crowded highway, the normal mode should work better. Power comes nice and strong on the 1-litre turbocharged engine, and the meat of the power band is felt from 3000 RPM, and the Sport mode also allows the engine to rev close to the red line before making an upshift. And speaking of Sport, you'll also notice on the IMT there were no red accents. We saw that in the Sport trim of the IMT when the IMT was introduced on the Venue, but no red accents now. So maybe there is a Venue N-line coming. Who knows? That N-line could have a gruntier exhaust note and even stiffer suspension setup like the i20 N-line. But that's a story for another day. Now, the Venue and Sonnet were 2 cars that had relatively stiffer ride or a firmer ride compared to the other vehicles in the segment, and that doesn't change by much even with the updated Venue. Since there are no mechanical changes then, the petrol DCT or the diesel manual remain my recommendations for the new Venue as well, depending of course on your monthly mileage. If you need the convenience of a diesel automatic though in a similar package, you would have to look elsewhere, like maybe the Kia Sonet, but it will charge quite a bit of premium. One thing that Hyundai should have definitely done is equip this cabin with 4 airbags as a standard fitment. We've seen Kia do that with the Sonet, and it does start at a similar entry price point, and they've still managed to add those 2 side airbags as well. I think Hyundai should have done that too. You do get more airbags, however, as you climb up the order, but 4 airbags should have been standard. With on-road prices between 8.5 to 15.5 lakh rupees at the time of this test, the Venue remains one of the best spec sub-4 meter crossovers out there. Its only shortcoming is its firm ride, but otherwise the improved space management and a longer list of features than before make it a compelling buy in the sub-4 meter crossover space.